When a troubled, to put it lightly, young man was bullied in school, he spent the next several years becoming more and more edgy online. We can see a long record of his online activity that shows the downfall of a young man and the birth of a deranged mass killer. Today we are going to be doing a deep dive into a school shooter's gradual descent into madness. We can see this kid going from being a sad, lonely, bullied kid wanting to be a hero to wanting to be the killer himself. Leaving a mountain of online activity behind, we can really start to see when the first change occurs. Let's look into exactly what makes a young man go down this path in the first place. William Edward Bill Atchison was born on March 18th of 1996 in Belen, New Mexico, the younger of two sons. According to Bill himself, his childhood was very rough due to his home life and his violent father. In his own words, he said,
"My life was ruined once my shithead dad beat up my mom and abruptly forced us to move to the middle of nowhere. I went from an A-plus student to a flunky contemplating ending it all at age 10. Moved to this town in 2005. After a divorce. Dad was really abusive physically and psychologically. My only ally was my 3 friends at school. They fucked with me all the time. I was a sad kid. My life was tolerable for a bit, but became really horrible."
Our story begins in a small town in northwest New Mexico called Aztec, right up there near the Navajo Nation. This is where Bill and his family ultimately moved. It's a place mostly known for its oil and natural gas deposits, being about 3 hours away from Albuquerque. The town only has a population of roughly 6,500 people in total. Bill was not a fan of living in such a small town, something that he would come to make very clear throughout his writings. Not all of Bill's problems came from his environment or the people around him. He also had a good amount of internal, personal turmoil. From a very young age, he had an anger problem, something he has gladly spoken of himself on multiple occasions. He spoke about tearing up his toys and video games when he was as young as 9 years old, throwing them at the wall in a rage whenever he would lose a game. Eventually, Bill would go on to attend Aztec High School, where his life would only get worse. According to his father, Bill was bullied quite a bit in school. On one occasion, much worse than the others, he was attacked during a welding class. Bill later said that he was stabbed in this incident, although it isn't known to what extent the damage was. If it really was a stabbing, it couldn't have been too bad as he returned to school shortly after. There were some classmates that did try to befriend him. A friend named Tanner LeBlanc would later tell the media, "When Billy was in class, no one would ever talk to him," adding that Bill was shy but fairly nice and smiled a lot. However, he did have a stutter and began to wear a long, dark trench coat to school most of the time, something that often got him made fun of just that much more. In 2009, he would begin writing out his thoughts online. Fantasizing about having power, he posted about how he would behave if he were able to become a god.
"As a god, it would be my responsibility not to destroy the universal balance. Thus, I am unable to just appear instantly. I would need to convert them to being open-minded about other gods, and then I will appear. I will give out my 3 main rules. 1. Do not harm any living thing. If you break this rule, I will break your skull. 2. Do not act in violence of any form. 3. Don't be a stuffhead."
However, despite his ideal rules involving no harm and no violence, Bill often fantasized about violence himself to a gruesome extent. That very same year, he also wrote of his hatred for his mother, saying,
"I am going to grab a knife and shove it in the neck of my mother. I will then drag her dead body by the trash can, drain her blood, and then finally cut her and grind her up into little pieces. I will eat some of those pieces, and then I will probably barf. I will throw her body away in the trash can. I will then go slaughter sacred animals to appease the gods. Hail Satan! I am agnostic, not Satanist."
It doesn't stop there either, it only gets much worse. Shortly after, he wrote an even more concerning statement online, this time as an insult to a female reader. Once again dipping into power fantasy territory, he wrote,
"I will rape your hot lovey sister and then strangle her with her own hair. Then I will sneak into your parents' room and slaughter them. I will slowly walk to your room holding my bloodthirsty knife in my right hand. I walk into your room when I see that you're making out with yourself. I will grab you, tie you to your bed with your own hair, and super glue it shut. My bloodthirsty crave is not over. I finally rip your hair out and you experience excruciating pain. So painful that you scream and scream, but it can't stop. I ripped out the skin of your head, blood is drooping everywhere. Finally, I pluck your eyes right out with my knife and throw them down. I then cut your neck off and the arms and legs. Only the torso remains. I cut off the genitals, and I stab the stomach repeatedly. I finally finish off by ripping out your heart and consuming it. Nah, JK.
While this all seems very shocking on the surface, that last JK is actually really telling. Bill really enjoyed being an online troll, something he wholeheartedly admitted himself on multiple occasions. It's no secret that online trolls often take out their frustrations on other people over the internet, as they couldn't really do it in person. Bill was one of these people, and he completely owned up to it. He didn't try to hide it at all. In fact, when asked what being a troll was, he said, "The shortest I can describe trolls. Trolls are basically young teenagers who bully online to get a rise because they have a personality disorder and want to cover up the hole that real bullies left in their emotion." By 2010, Bill's mental state was starting to take a toll on his body as well. He became anorexic, refusing to eat more than the bare minimum and losing a lot of weight. Then he discovered marijuana and started using it more frequently, giving him the appetite to put back on so much weight that he actually overcorrected in the other direction and became obese. Then he abruptly stopped smoking and cut out soda and lost about 20 pounds. Bill tried to get a job at McDonald's in 2011 when he was 15 years old. He succeeded, and he got to the point where he made about $1,000 before he decided to bail out and never come back. After that, he started working at a Safeway, but he got laid off after a few months. He then attempted further work by helping out a couple of computer shops, but neither of these shops were successful and both of them closed down after not too long. His motivation to work was getting lower and lower. Later on in high school, in 2012, Bill started showing up to school with self-harm marks, namely burns on his arms. That same year, Bill ran into trouble with the police for the first time. This was when his neighbor would come to call the cops on him twice, once for firing an airsoft gun at their dogs, and again when he left some weed on their property, got into an argument with the homeowner about it, and threatened to shoot him. After this, the neighbors refused to let their sons hang out with Bill any longer. By now, associates would say that Bill spent the bulk of his time inside and alone, adding that virtually everyone bullied him. Bill came to become obsessed with mass shooters, mainly school shooters. In March of that year, he used a whiteboard in class to write out a timeline of the Columbine High School massacre. Because of this, he was suspended and asked to see a counselor and a psychologist. The truth was, Bill had been seeing counselors for years and nothing had really come of it. He tried seeing this new counselor a few times, but in the end, he never came back to school after his suspension. He decided to drop out of school that summer. He tried to get a GED, but it doesn't seem that he was ever successful in that endeavor. Bill had a few ideas for the future. When asked what he would like to do, he said, "My dream job would have to involve synthesizing pure LSD legally and selling it to the right kind of people who wouldn't abuse it. I will be living in a basement pretty soon, once I finish moving in with my bro. And, once my dad's put 6 feet under, I can use that inheritance to move the hell out of the heart of the Southwest and move to one of the few places in America that doesn't suck." However, less optimistically, he also wrote, "I don't know what I'll be up to in 2022 or 2023. I could be dead for all I know." Adding that he had major depression, was unable to feel joy, had intense levels of sadistic desires, and various addictions. He said that he was now 5'7" and weighed less than 120 pounds. However, he started to feel that he was coming to find some coping mechanisms, though. In fact, he felt that he could probably help some other people learn to deal with their problems too. He wrote, "If I go a few days without jacking off, I get severe depression. Masturbation, drugs, and happy, cheerful things are the only things combating my major depression. If I found an internet user talking about their depression or talking about suicide, I'd try to befriend them and get them out of that pit of darkness. I've been through that hell countless times in my life, and I've discovered techniques you can use to snap out of it." When it came to his obsession with school shootings, at this time in his life he seemed to fantasize about being some sort of hero during these situations. He often wished he could go back in time, saying things like, "I'd go back in time and stop a lot of the school shootings such as Columbine or VTech by being a positive influence and spreading hope in the minds of the shooters and keep them on a path of enlightenment." However, his desire to stop those sort of situations would gradually come to change over time. Bill, feeling very alone and desperate, took to websites like LiveJournal to find someone who could help him out, give him some advice at the very least. On a website called Think Atheist, somewhat of a blog posting website, he wrote a very long post detailing about how he felt at the time. Some of the highlights of these posts read as such.
I don't want to be lame or anything, but I should probably come out about all this. One, I have no education. I dropped out of AHS back in 2010, then was forced to attend again and dropped out again in 2012. I had a 3.5 GPA, but the culture there was backwards as hell, as if it was stuck in the 1950s. Nothing but savages and douchebags. I never motivated myself to get a GED. I need the forced classes and structure of school, but couldn't deal with all the meth heads, roughnecks, and rednecks. 2. I have no job. I tried to apply at a few places. Wendy's, General Dollar, and Dairy Queen. All rejected LOL. And besides, I don't have the strength to deal with those people. I can be a hard worker, but I got real bad social anxiety, hate, and fear of all these people. Plus, I don't got a phone to keep in touch with the boss if they force me to go in for overtime. I got a nocturnal schedule anyways. No car though, nor a license. 3. I have no friends here. All my friends are digital now. Only time in life that I had a social life were the times I didn't live in the four corners. I tried a lot during my childhood in this area. But let me just put it this way. One of my friends and their little brothers and sisters stealthily stole my PlayStation 1 I had since the 90s, along with dozens of games, all which could be worth thousands of dollars nowadays. 4. Major depression, large amounts of anger and hatred, lots of boredom. I used to cure it through bong hits and video games, but I can't even find those enjoyable anymore.
While it was very evident that he had his own problems within, he had to vent his frustrations about his family as well. It became very clear that he wasn't too keen on them whatsoever, if it wasn't already clear by this point.
My dad's a fat, lazy idiot who watches Fox News all day, weighs 350 pounds, and throws hissy fits over everything. Never even bothered to help me get my driver's license, and I'm not entitled or spoiled or anything. I'd gladly get a job and pay for my own car. My mom's a psycho hillbilly drunk from Florida who's really mentally ill. She smokes and drinks a lot and smells disgusting, and has no manners whatsoever. The most hillbilly accent you can imagine. My bro is an antisocial douche with no education at 27. He's a user, always manipulating people and draining their resources. He moved back into this crap house with his wife, who bore 2 kids from some other guy, ex-meth, no education either.
He ended by saying, "Should I escape this dump or deal with it? How can I become polite and make some friends out there in this world?" In the end, over 230 people viewed the post. Not one single person replied. It seems that due to the way his family, mainly his father, acted, Bill came to hate the United States as a whole, despite never really leaving his very small town. He said, "A massive amount of Americans are depressed for a lot of reasons. Lousy environment, few friends, bad or non-existent family members, singleness, bullying, harassment, stress, taxes, poverty, etc. Compared to a lot of countries, much of the US is a third world country in comparison. It's a shame." Like a lot of people online who frequented places like 4chan, Encyclopedia Dramatica, and Kiwi Farms, Bill began to harbor a fairly intense hatred for women, although it isn't really clear why. Until this point, it seems that he had many more bad experiences with men than women. Nevertheless, he felt how he felt. For example, he stated, "Sex between an unmarried man and woman. I think saving yourself, whatever gender you are, until marriage is stupid, not because I'm against the idea of loyalty, but because once you get married, the sex stops. Marriage is a scam, and 80% of divorces are made by women. I hate the idea of sexual casualization. If you're gonna bone someone, make sure it's during a relationship. I think that's a reasonable, non-extremist, and level-headed opinion." While that quote in itself isn't too bad, on another occasion he wrote, "Women should not be allowed to enter into the military or government, nor should they be allowed to vote. They should be demoted to sex objects to be sold by their fathers to all genetically superior people, intellectuals." Given how he felt about both America and women, you can imagine that Bill hated nothing more than the combination of the two, American women, saying, "Most American women, brain dead, immature, cheating, lazy, fat, mentally damaged." Becoming more and more active online and looking into the mass shootings he took so much interest in, Bill came to find entertainment in famous killers at the least, and maybe even admire them at the most. Specifically, he liked both Elliot Rodger and Adam Lanza, stating, "The autists like Elliot Rodger and Adam Lanza were pretty entertaining. You should turn those youth to the dark side and have them feed the demons in their heads more blood." In fact, he came to compare himself to Elliot Rodger, likely half-jokingly saying, "If I'm stuck as a NEET, how can I live? Am I just a supreme gentleman?" Eventually, he seems to have been inspired by these killers, coming to his own conclusions, writing, "Mass murder is the purity and cleansing of the corrupt and degenerate gene pool." Now thoroughly corrupted, Bill continued his journey all over the internet. He gradually went from only following and reading to making posts of his own, becoming quite known in some small circles. It was around this time that Bill's father and brother could constantly hear red pill and neo-Nazi content streaming from his room. Bill decided to tattoo a swastika on his body and dive even deeper into white supremacist content from this point onwards. He took to sites like 4chan and Kiwi Farms to post content relative to his views, with his profile picture on Kiwi Farms being a screenshot of Edward Norton in American History X. While he had once fantasized about being the hero who stopped school shootings, over time Bill had gradually come to admire the killers instead. While he felt that a lot of the shooters out there were lame, he took a liking to Eric and Dylan from Columbine in particular. He told other forum users, "You might not want to admit it, but those two fuckers had style," admiring the impact that they had on society and the moral panic that they caused. He looked up to them because they were bullied, but he did say that the victims they chose were owed some attention as they were innocent. On Halloween, Bill even dressed up as a school shooter, specifically Dylan Klebold, sporting his signature trench coat, rounded sunglasses, boots, and even carrying a model of his Tech-9 gun. He also wore a t-shirt similar to Dylan's, although it said math instead of wrath, most likely so that he could say that he was only trolling. Bill once again tried to go out there and get some work, getting a job at a local giant gas station near his house. Having no transportation, he walked to work back and forth each day. He hated this job, the customers in particular, and took to the internet to vent his frustrations. Bill began to post a lot of pro-Hitler content, becoming very active on websites like the Daily Stormer, and also becoming quite a big fan of Donald Trump. He would often be criticized for posting about his love for Trump on the websites he frequented, being told that his posts were basically, quote, shitty Facebook commentaries. He was also heavily criticized for often stating his love for the Columbine massacre. Still though, eventually he worked his way up to becoming a moderator on Encyclopedia Dramatica, a website infamous for its relentless bullying of online personalities. Users on these websites began to know who he was, seeing that he fit the image of a budding mass killer pretty perfectly, with many of them often asking him, "So how's the manifesto going?" in jest. By 2016, Bill was in direct, active communication with an 18-year-old Iranian-German man named David Sonbuli. The two of them were active in a Steam chat group called the Anti-Refugee Club. In this group, the members would idolize killers and express their hatred for Jews, migrants, refugees, and basically anyone not white. They spoke about their interest in weapons and mass killings and often played Counter-Strike together, which Bill was now playing for about 10 hours a day. A lot of members of that group felt that their banter was mainly satire, but it's fairly evident that Bill and David took it pretty seriously. David would later go on to commit a mass shooting in Munich later that year, killing 9 people and injuring 36 before ultimately turning the gun on himself. After the shooting, Bill went over to Encyclopedia Dramatica to post about his admiration for what David had done, calling him a true Aryan and true German. Bill also took admiration for another friend online, a 15-year-old named Carter Boyles who had interests very similar to his own. Like Bill, Carter was very interested in shootings and posted videos online related to them. His final upload was a YouTube video showing a walkthrough of his school. Carter actually came to walk into his own school and end his own life via gunshot, something that saddened Bill greatly. Bill once again took to Encyclopedia Dramatica to write about him. Writing under the name Al Gore, he said, It is believed that Carter was calmly talked down from going postal, instead unfortunately choosing to take his own life and becoming an hero to us all. It's a shame he had to go out like that, because he was pretty damn cool when I chatted to him. Other users still felt that Bill was mainly trolling, satirizing, or just joking with most of his messages. One later wrote, "Bill wasn't alt-right, he wasn't neo-Nazi. Bill hated both sides. His emotions mixed with his politics. He was edgy, he was offensive, and he was shocking. He said a lot out of pure shock." However, the FBI didn't agree. After Bill posted a comment on Steam asking where he could get a cheap assault rifle to commit a shooting, the FBI came out to his home in March of 2016 and interviewed him and his family. At first, they were under the impression that Bill's older brother had made the comment before finding out who actually wrote it. Bill once again told them that he was only trolling and venting his frustrations. Feeling that he was harmless, seeing that he had no criminal record, and surprised at how cooperative he was, the FBI seemed to believe him.
And I've had a life, so their solution was to go psycho, and mine is pretty much control, like make fun of everyone,
Why do you say, William, you have a life, man?
Well, my history is
like what?
Like I've been stabbed, and my body's covered with scars for being stabbed, and I've been
Who stabbed
before.
you? Let's see him.
Like gangsters and like, let's just have a sense of humor. Like, all my I've done online,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't actually do any of this
When asked for some assurance, Bill told the FBI to put him on a watch list if they like. He told the FBI that he had no plans to kill anyone, and they took him at face value, closing the case and simply leaving. They never put Bill onto any sort of watch list and never notified the local schools of what he had written. Bill came to laugh about the visit from the FBI on his YouTube account, where he went by Vance Stone, writing, "I was part of the trolling in Lowell's. The feds investigated me because some reported my profile to troll me. They said they didn't think I was a serious threat and understood the satire." The FBI fumbled again by, instead of Bill, once again giving Bill's brother's information to the local police department, including a sketch of him, his photo, and his whereabouts. This was never followed up upon or corrected in any way. The police never did anything with the information anyhow. Getting more depressed, Bill wrote on Steam,
"How am I supposed to function in this world? Wherever I go, I see degeneracy, pointless materialism, hedonism, sexual decay, dirty who do nothing but slowly break down the society, etc. It's fucking everywhere. No way to escape it. 99% of people are part of it, and whatever I do, I am confronted with the death of the West. Go to the store and buy groceries in peace? Nope. Here's a group of LGBT liberal filth in line with you, and there's a family with 10 kids over there. And a Finn too, but he's overweight as fuck and he's buying alcohol and shit junk food. Fucking fantastic. I used to think that this was a phase and we'd get over it, but I have now come to realize that I was born into a literal dystopia."
Bill was eventually banned on YouTube, being fairly certain that he was shut down by the Jews, not for his mountain of community guideline violations.
All my videos got me permanently fucking banned in the European Union and shit. So every single video I upload, no matter how innocent it shit, gets me a legal complaint from the following countries: Austria, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Guatemala, France, French Guinea or whatever the fuck, Guadeloupe, Israel, I wonder why, Italy, Martinique, or whatever the fuck, hold on. You got here at a bad time because like 90% of my videos are gone at least. Like I had 200 videos at my peak earlier this year and shit. Whatever.
He began playing a game called Blockland.us, a Minecraft-type game. There he had over 40 different characters, most edgy or offensive in one way or another. He even had a character that he modeled after Elliot Rodger, along with some made to look like other killers, such as Sung Hui Cho and Adam Lanza. In November of 2017, he spoke online of being sexually abused by a man who had given him a ride while he was hitchhiking and mentioned his guilt at having had enjoyed it. It's unknown if this actually happened or if he was simply trolling once again. Given the wording of the message, it doesn't seem like he's taking it very seriously, but it's hard to tell. That same month, now 21 years old, Bill went out with his father to buy a gun. They went out to the Sportsman's Warehouse in Farmington, where he legally purchased a 9mm semi-automatic Glock handgun along with a .22 caliber rifle. After he bought the gun, his concerned father jokingly told him to never point it at anyone, even telling him, never do a school shooting. Bill responded that he knew that he would never do something like that. Either way, his father was worried because of his concerning online activity. By now, he could hear both of his sons listening to constant white supremacist content and told them to, quote, stop listening to that shit. Shortly after, Bill and his brother took the two guns out to test them out. It wasn't long before Bill finally expressed his clear intention to perform a school shooting while dressed up as a student for the first time online. Bill began to go back to his old high school, Aztec High School, to do some surveillance around the property. He was even given a full tour by one of the teachers. He began to play some video games that he felt could better prepare him for doing what he was about to do. Shortly after, while working at the gas station, a couple of police officers actually came into casual conversation with him, saying that they felt nothing out of the ordinary with him. That same day, though, Bill took to Kiwi Farms to write his final message online. Praise be to Allah, trolling until the very end. December 7th, 2017. Bill, usually working overnight shifts, came home at about 6 a.m. His father was sitting around when Bill entered their home. The two started talking, with the father asking how Bill was doing. He said bad because work sucks. He hated both the job and the customers, specifically noting that nobody but crackheads go to the shop overnight. He refused to speak any more beyond that, simply shaking his head and going up to his room. Bill's father didn't see him again, feeling that he probably just fell asleep as usual. Bill, in his room, wrote out his plans. He wrote a text file and put it onto a thumb drive. It read,
If things go according to plan, today would be when I die. I go somewhere and gear up, then hold a class hostage and go apeshit, then blow my brains out. Work sucks, school sucks, life sucks. I just want out of this shit. Fuck this state, it really is bad. Think I'm insane? I'm actually more rational, peaceful, and less loony than a majority of the citizenry of this entire region.
Bill then began to write out his plans, which weren't too sophisticated. The plans consisted of a rough timeline, consisting of things like work, prep, walk, and finally, die. He tore up that piece of paper, instead writing the same timeline and putting it on his thumb drive after. He collected all of the gear that he had amassed over a short time and got ready. At 7:30 a.m., without his father noticing, Bill left his house and began to walk towards the school. He walked over from Yemez Street and onto East Zaya Street, out into the parking lot, and then entered the school. This was caught on security camera footage, although there was no footage of the interior of the school. Bill entered through the main doors disguised as a student. He was carrying a backpack like any other kid, although his contained his Glock along with several magazines. Now that he was inside, Bill needed somewhere to gear up. He walked up the stairs and into one of the bathrooms on the second floor to take out his gun and get ready. This was when a student, Francisco Fernandez, who others called Paco, walked in on him and caught him in the act. Bill panicked, likely knowing that Francisco would run away and alert the school. He shot him then and there, with Francisco falling flat onto his back onto the floor of the bathroom. Bill stepped over him and headed back out into the hallways. In the hallways, he came across a 17-year-old cheerleader named Casey Marquez taking a drink at the water fountain just outside the bathrooms. He shot her close range multiple times in the thigh, stomach, chest, and even her head. She collapsed to the ground in the fetal position. Both a teacher named Steve Lanier and a custodian named Thomas Emery Hill saw it happen with their own eyes. Thomas ran away, shouting about an active shooter, yelling at the teachers to lock their doors. Many of the teachers did so, with one 74-year-old substitute teacher even barricading the door with a couch. Bill walked up and down the halls, firing shots indiscriminately at nothing in particular and reloading multiple times. He walked up to different classrooms, shouting, "I know you're in there," and firing through the walls. Luckily, nobody was hit. Thomas, the custodian, was able to radio the office and get the whole school into lockdown. It was now 8:11 a.m., roughly 10 minutes into the attack, and the police were finally called. Bill continued to walk up and down the hallways, yelling and firing random shots through the walls. The police arrived at the school less than a minute after the call and broke through a window to gain access. Bill gave up. He put the gun into his mouth and fired upwards. He fell back against some lockers and then onto the floor. He was gone before the police even got to him. Many of the students within the school still had no idea what was happening as it all started and ended so quickly. A lot of them thought that someone was merely going around screaming and punching lockers. Once the police confirmed that everything was all over, the students were finally allowed to leave. They walked out through the back of the building and into the parking lot. They were later moved to McGee Park to be reunited with their worried families. After the shooting, members of the small community gathered all around the town in churches, parks, and community centers. They held a candlelit vigil for the victims and offered up their prayers. Some waved American flags, while some voiced their opinion that teachers should be allowed to have guns to protect their students. The governor of New Mexico, Susana Martinez, said that the acts of the teachers and the custodian at the school were brave and prevented the situation from getting worse than it already was. The mayor of the town of Aztec, Sally Burbridge, posted her thoughts on Facebook shortly after, writing, "Right now we need to keep each other in our hearts and thoughts and take care of each other." The FBI arrived on scene a while later and began to gather information. Bill's father, Wayne, was taken in to be questioned. Wayne had an idea of what had gone down earlier, but he didn't know his son was involved. He was shocked to hear that not only was Bill the shooter, but he was dead. Distraught, he continued with the interview, asking simple questions to the best of his ability.
I'm not one to mince words, and there's no easy way to talk about this, but I do believe that that is true. There are 3 people dead at the Aztec High School, and one of them is your son.
One of them is my... Oh,
yes,
my God.
Okay?
Oh, fuck. I thought he was in jail.
No, sir.
Oh, fuck. Oh, good. Fuck. Oh, man. Okay.
The police came out to inform the public that the 2 victims of the shooting were not specifically targeted. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The San Juan County Sheriff, Ken Christensen, said that Bill was, quote, determined to create as much carnage as he possibly could, saying that he planned on killing many more. He added, "It's a shame he wasn't on our radar. I don't think he had anything so much as a traffic ticket." A captain at the sheriff's office was asked what Bill's motive might have been, to which he responded, "I really don't think he had a motive other than to be famous in that world, whatever world that is." Later on, the Southern Poverty Law Center published a report asserting that the white supremacist views that Bill held were likely to blame for the attack, noting his previous online associates that had committed similar attacks. The police continued to comb through the crime scene as well as Bill's home to gather their own evidence to come to a conclusion. However, even after picking up his scribbles, his thumb drive, computer, and Xbox, they didn't really find much. Even when diving into his online writings, he does allude to committing some sort of attack, but he doesn't exactly say why. They actually said that they didn't feel that white supremacy was the motive. Although the 2 people Bill shot before the school went into lockdown were Hispanic, both were simply the only people he saw in the halls before the school went into lockdown. The police said, "We don't have a motive other than it was planned. He obviously did something in his life where he came up with this plan and idea and went through with it. Online gaming, or the people he associated with, or what. This was his plan, and I don't know. The shooter had serious issues and was hell-bent on mass casualties for his own personal notoriety." The coroner performed an autopsy on Bill and found that he had indeed passed away from a shot to the head. Interestingly, they also found some pretty concerning symbols drawn onto his body. He had the previously mentioned swastika along with SS symbols, AMOG, which means Alpha Male of Group, and Build Wall written on his arms and legs. He also had one more, reading Your Home, placed right above his crotch. Bill's family had him cremated and scattered his ashes in the Gulf of Mexico. Since the attack, they haven't been very vocal. The sheriff's office completed their investigation in August of 2018, coming to the conclusion that Bill didn't have any accomplices nor did he have any sort of motive. They did believe that he may have chosen the anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attacks, saying that he probably had a relative that died in that attack, saying that he picked a day that he thought was already infamous to use for his own benefit. The family of the female victim, Casey Marquez, ended up filing 2 wrongful death lawsuits after the attack. The first was against both the Aztec school district and the police department. It was found that the school had been recommended infrastructure improvements, such as a fence and a funneled entrance that would have made attacks like this a lot harder to commit. However, the superintendent had dismissed these changes, saying that the risk was too low to justify spending that much money. Casey's mother filed a second wrongful death lawsuit shortly after, this time suing the FBI. She claimed that the FBI was negligent when they dismissed Bill as being no threat despite the mountain of evidence showing otherwise. She said that the attack would have been stopped if the FBI had taken their threat assessment more seriously. She specifically mentioned Bill's mental health issues, his history of being bullied, and his friendship with David Somboli. She was seeking unspecified damages for lost value of life, pain, and suffering, in addition to loss of earning capacity. However, the FBI was found to have immunity in their decision, and this suit was dismissed. Casey's mother faced even more shock when she finally received her daughter's belongings after the investigation was over. In her attorney's words, "In fact, there were 2 monsters on the day of the shooting. The shooter as well as J.D. Coulter, who was the teacher at the time." J.D. Coulter, or James Coulter, was one of Casey's teachers. On the phone, her mother found numerous inappropriate, blatantly sexual messages from her teacher. Going all the way back, it was very evident that the two had been in a secret relationship since fall of 2017, half a year before the shooting. Looking even worse on the school, this was not James Coulter's first incident. Since being hired as the girls' junior varsity basketball coach in 2013, he had numerous inappropriate incidents with female students. His first was only in 2014, shortly after being hired 1 semester prior. In fact, he continued to have allegations placed against him even after the shooting. To add insult to injury, Casey was only in the hallway because she had been in James' office, somewhere she wasn't even supposed to be. It's only because she was leaving his office that she was where she was at the time she was murdered. Had she had not been in this secret relationship, she would have been in class with all the other safe kids. Casey's mother went on to add sexual harassment to her original lawsuit against the school. It wasn't long before James Coulter was interviewed by the police and quickly admitted to kissing her and groping her. He described their interactions as hugging, kissing Casey while she was in her car and the car was parked on AHS grounds, kissing in the classrooms at AHS when they could, massaging Casey's legs while they were in his car, grabbing and squeezing Casey's buttocks on one occasion when he was in her car, and fondling Casey's breast when they were in her parked car. He even admitted that he had relationships with other students, some even younger than Casey, for years now. This was apparently somewhat of an open secret. Casey's family attorney said, "The school did not take the actions necessary to protect their students. Instead, they protected their teachers, which is something we would never want to see." The principal of Aztec High School strongly recommended that James Coulter be terminated from his job for inappropriate conduct and texting communications with a student, exploitation, and sexual harassment. Instead, James resigned himself, stating that it was due to the anxiety surrounding the shooting, not the allegations. Eventually, James Coulter entered a plea agreement in December of 2019, 2 years after the shooting. He pled guilty to 4th-degree criminal sexual assault of a minor. He was sentenced to serve probation in order to register as a sex offender, but he didn't face any jail time. Just recently, in 2024, the school district finally settled their case, paying out $2 million in the process. That was $750,000 for wrongful death and $1.2 million for personal injury. The attack has led to legislators in New Mexico adding extra funding for school safety infrastructure, namely the fences and entrances that were neglected before. At Aztec specifically, the school got a fence and security around the doors is now higher. There was also a push to further support red flag laws and to make school shooting threats a 4th-degree felony, about on the same level as a bomb threat. It was debated on whether or not this case was actually an incident of incel violence. While Bill did seem to admire Elliot Rodger, and there is no doubt he didn't like women, he also didn't really have anything to do with specific incel communities and never described himself as one. He also didn't seem to complain about a lack of sex. It was later stated that the attack did not fit the pattern of an attack used to further the incel agenda. Casey's mother started a non-profit program called Aztec Strong SJC. This program will award college scholarships to students in New Mexico and Colorado. She doesn't seem to personally blame Bill for the shooting. Instead, she blames the community for letting him down and making him into what he was, saying that the whole thing was a collective failure. She said that they lost 3 children that day and that Bill was raised by the same community Casey was, saying, "This whole community lost him." A criminologist named Jillian Peterson heavily criticized the FBI after the attack, stating that they should have and could have done a lot more. When the FBI asked Bill to see a counselor, they didn't do anything to follow up and see if he actually did. She said that the FBI failed to realize that Bill was in a very serious mental health crisis and that he was both a danger to himself and others. However, Catherine Schweer, a former FBI official and mass shooting expert, said that the FBI did a thorough job. Peter Langman, a counseling psychologist who also studies mass shootings, agreed with her. Bill's former stomping grounds, Encyclopedia Dramatica, put up a page about Bill. They used his former screen name, Satanic Druggie, as well as his real identity. They filed him under their An Hero section. An Hero is 4chan slang for someone who has taken their own life. Some people on the forum spoke of what they remembered about him. One user said, "Yeah, I remember him literally bragging about being obsessed with Columbine in 2016. Now, Bill is only remembered as yet another American school shooter, if people remember him at all. Incidents like this one don't typically make much of a buzz in the media unless they have a higher amount of deaths. There are a lot of cases just like this one that largely go ignored because there are, sadly, too many of these cases to discuss them all. In the end, we don't know exactly why Bill did what he did for sure. All we know is that he was depressed, angry, and admired serial killers. Maybe that's all the reason he needed. Maybe we'll never know. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found this one interesting, please give me a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I'm still doing a little bit of work trying to make the new camera look a bit better, but hopefully it was better off this time than last time. If you're interested, I've recently started up a podcast with 4 of my friends called the NBR Podcast. If you find this channel interesting, you might like that one as well. I've also got a merch store up too, where you can get yourself some nifty Dire Trip t-shirts. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media, that's always appreciated, and I really appreciate when people follow me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are back up too, and you can get the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.